Hey guys, how's it going? It's Alien again. We're back yet again with another weapon guide for you, and this one's going to be all about the Fists of Malphon here. So we're going to go through each aspect with the fist, and then we're going to go through every hammer possible with the fist as well. And at the end of the guide, I'm going to go over some boons that I think work really well with each aspect and each hammer there. Now keep in mind, this is of course just my opinion, and so some things might work better for you and it might work better for me, and that's okay. I always encourage you to try things out on your own and let me know what you think is best for you or for other players in the comments below. Alright guys, let's do it. Alright, so first off, we're just going to go over the basics with the fists here, and luckily pretty much all the aspects work very similar with the fists, so it's not going to be too hard to demonstrate everything here. So the fist has a rapid attack here, just like that. There is a combo that it eventually ends on. Now, one of the big strats here with the fist is that you can actually dash in the middle of the combo in order to keep it going. And the reason why you want to do that is actually because you can continuously stagger enemies just like so, without actually having any gaps in between. That way the enemies never have a chance to actually hit you back. This can actually be very, very important for your runs here. It's gonna enable you to stay a little bit safer with a very melee-based weapon here. So this way you can kind of mitigate some of the danger you'd normally have by just continuously staggering your enemies. You also have the special move here, which is this uppercut, and you can actually, what's special about the fist here is you can actually do a dash upper. What's different about the special for the fist is that it can actually get modified by your dash strike damage. So from Artemis's dash attack boon, or from Chaos actually too, you can actually get additional dash strike damage that will increase this from the dash upper, as they call it here in the game. The fists are pretty straightforward. After that, there's really not much else to say. It's just this basic moveset between the attack and the special here. Sometimes, depending on the aspect, it might be best to kind of switch up in between both of those moves, but we'll go over that in just a second here. Alright, now we're just going to go over the aspects, and we're going to start with the aspect of Zagreus here. So with aspect of Zag in the fist, you're going to have a 15% dodge chance. Very simple, very straightforward when it comes to this aspect, and I think it's a solid bonus. It's a pretty nice Zag aspect overall, nothing wrong with it. It might be one of the better aspects when it comes to trying to increase heat and trying to get a further win, I think, actually, because it's a very nice defensive bonus, which you don't see that much with aspects here. 15% dodge is actually really nice. There's not much else to say about it. You just kind of want to play probably mostly around an attack style here, since you don't get much of a bonus on your special with that, but I think it's a solid aspect, and it does just fine, especially for only 5 Titan Blood. After that, we got Aspect of Talos. Your special becomes Magnetic Cutter, and its pull deals 20 damage. So when something gets magnetized, you get an attack and cast bonus of 50% there. The magnetize debuff lasts for 4 seconds. So this aspect I think has some great potential here. I think a lot of times we end up comparing it to other aspects that just simply have passive bonuses. I'm thinking Poseidon's Sword, where you just have 50% extra cast damage against everything all the time. You don't have to apply a debuff or anything, and it's kind of hard to compare in that aspect from that angle there, but I think that's okay, because I think when it comes to aspects of Talos, you just kind of can't think of it as a cast aspect. I think you got to think about it as more of a fun attack bonus build. I think that would be the best way to utilize this aspect, is to basically get enemies with this purple debuff that you see there and pull them towards you, and then start wailing on them with the attack. There's definitely a lot of cool stuff you can do with this aspect, and I just love the whole idea behind it, being able to pull enemies towards you and things like that. So I think it's actually a nice and fun aspect, maybe not necessarily the best one to utilize while increasing heat or trying to go really fast, but I think it's really cool. Up next, we have Aspect of Demeter. After landing 12 strikes, and that means regular attacks, your next special hits more times. At max, this is going to do 5 more special hits. So as you can imagine, this can get pretty powerful. I think it's just really cool to see those chunky 5 times specials go out there and deal a massive amount of damage here. So I'll show you what it looks like with the charge up here after Skelly comes back. And I think it is kind of cool, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to go full in on the special here with the fist most times, I think. So after striking 12 times, you see this little blue magnetic field around Zagreus, and now when I use my special, it's going to land 5 times here. It's just so cool to see it. I really like this aspect, and I think it's fun. It's very different. You build up that combo, and then you release this very powerful attack, and I think it works actually really well even in practice here. We're going to go over some boons that work great with this, but I think it's very versatile and just makes you think differently about how you want to build. Last up, we have Aspect of Gilgamesh. You have the Claws of Enkidu, whose dash upper can maim foes, and the maim is going to deal 400 damage. So this is a very, very different kind of aspect here. So you got a different moveset. You got a bigger attack, a slower attack, but you get +2 rapid dash charges. And when you do a dash upper, which I also call a dash special kind of, that's how you inflict the maim damage. So you have these extra dashes here. You can actually just hold down the dash button to continuously do them, and that's just really awesome to have here, I think. And it kind of makes you think a little bit differently about the game, where you could build a lot more into simply dashing and powering up a dash boon. The one big thing to note about the Gilgamesh aspect is the dash attack damage is severely reduced. You can see here, it's only 20 damage when you do an actual dash attack. Meanwhile, a regular attack deals 60 damage. That's a pretty big difference. So that it's kind of this weird place where you want to dash around a lot with the extra dashes, but you don't want to dash attack. You only want to regular attack. When it comes to the special here, it deals a decent amount of damage, but not a ton. It hits twice there, as you can see. And then if you do the dash upper, it only hits once, but that's how you inflict the maim. It's kind of hard to imagine a place where you'd go full on into a special build with Gilgamesh here, but I'd love for someone to prove it for me if you can. And you saw there the maim got inflicted. Maim is sort of another form of doom damage in a sense. So you inflict that maim, you wait a pretty long period of time here, and the enemy eventually takes 400 damage at the max there. So while the enemy is maimed, and this is important, they will actually take an additional 25% damage, but you take an additional 50% from them. That's a very, very big downside, I'm gonna say. It's actually incredibly scary, but you guys know me, I love the idea of a glass cannon build, so I love to try to make this work. So I don't know if when I use this, if I'm going to be inflicting maim all that often necessarily. It's kind of like the same issue with Talos, where inflicting this status effect on a lot of different enemies, if you got a room full of all different types, it's kind of a lot of business to do to try to get it on every single thing there. But I think just getting regular attack build going with Gilgamesh here can be quite strong, and inflicting maim on bosses, maybe when you have opportunities where you think you're safe, can actually be utilized pretty well too. One last thing I want to cover very quickly about Gilgamesh is Gilgamesh gives you a great opportunity to utilize Ruthless Reflex from the Mirror of Night. So you don't have 2 dashes, you only have 1, but you gain 50% damage and dodge for a couple seconds when you dash just before getting hit. Now remember, you get +2 extra dashes passive from Gilgamesh, so basically you go from 4 dashes to 3 with Ruthless Reflex, and that's fine. I mean, plus 50% dodge and damage, that's insane, that's crazy. This is the best instance I can think of to use Ruthless Reflex, I think, and I really would just take it every single time with Gilgamesh. Alright guys, so next I got the wiki pulled up on the right here. We're going to go through every single hammer that you can possibly get with the fist, and I'm going to tell you which ones I think work best, which ones I think might be a little bit underwhelming, and which aspects I think that they're best paired with. So first on our list, we have Breaching Cross. Your dash strike pierces foes and deals plus 900% damage to armor. I think this is an amazing hammer, actually. So number one, you're really quick hitting, and you can actually get dash strikes constantly with the fist here, especially with Gilgamesh, although you have that diminished damage, so it probably doesn't work that great with Gilgamesh, honestly. But nevertheless, I think this is amazing because stripping enemies of their armor is really important, especially when you're going to be in melee range all the time with the fist here. And so I think Breaching Cross is actually amazing for that. Once you get rid of the armor, you can get down to the enemy's health pool, and then you can just start staggering them continuously. It also helps strip like mini bosses' armor. Think about the butterfly ball in Elysium and stuff. You're just going to strip that armor like crazy with the first 3 aspects here. I think this is a top pick with Zag, Talos, and Demeter aspect, honestly. Maybe not quite as much as Gilgamesh here, just because, again, that dash attack damage with Gilgamesh is so much less, but I think this is probably S tier, at least A tier for me. Next up, we have Rolling Knuckle. Your dash strike deals plus 60% damage, and it has an added attack sequence. So what this means actually is, So your dash strikes deal more damage, and then also at the end of your attack combo, you actually do a dash strike instead, and then you continuously attack. So it's not like normal here, where when you just hold down the attack button, you kind of have this long delay in between. There's actually simply an added dash strike at the end of the combo, and then you keep attacking very rapidly even still after that. So your combo actually never really ends. I think this is a very nice hammer, actually. I think this works really well in a lot of instances. I think the nature of Hades means that you can't really just stand there and continuously attack over and over and stand still, so that aspect of it isn't super amazing, but I think just having extra dash attack is actually pretty nice here. I'd put this as a B, maybe even A in terms of tier rankings. And I actually think it works really well with Zag, Talos, and Demeter, and for the same reasons as Breaching Cross, not that great with Gilgamesh just because of that diminished dash attack damage. Up next we have Long Knuckle. Your attack has more range and deals plus 10% damage. So you cannot get this hammer with Gilgamesh, but this is actually a great hammer for the other three aspects here. I know plus 10% damage isn't much, but that extra range is actually really, really powerful, and it changes how you play a little bit here. It kind of turns your fist into almost a little bit more reminiscent of the rail with that amount of range there. It's not quite as much, obviously, but still, it kind of allows you to play a much different and safer game. Think about the flame wheels in Elysium. You can kind of a little bit more safely attack and kill them without them exploding on your face when you have Long Knuckle on. I think this is a great pick for any time you're using the fist here. There's nothing wrong with ever taking this, I think. I think for me, it's not quite a very interesting pick, but it's definitely a good one if you're just trying to beat the game. Next up, we have Draining Cutter. Whenever your special slays foes, you restore 2% of your total health. This, to me, is not a great pick. I think because a lot of times the special with the fist is just going to be not doing a whole lot of work for you in terms of killing enemies. And with Aspect of Demeter, that's a little bit of a difference, but even then, it's kind of hard to control it and make sure that you're actually killing a lot of enemies with this, I think. I think there's a couple of cool combos you could do with this, but I'm not so certain if this hammer is really gonna save you from dying necessarily a lot of times. It's a bit too hard to pull off. You know, if this was your attack restores health, then it would be a completely different game, honestly. But I think there's a bit too much of a delay between continuously using the special is the problem. Just like this, as you can see. So it kind of means that it's a bit hard to control this and get a lot of health restoration out of it. Next up, we have Concentrated Knuckle. Your attack deals plus 5 base damage for each uninterrupted hit to a foe. So plus 5 base damage is actually a lot when you think about it. The problem that comes in here is uninterrupted, and uninterrupted can be a little strange here. So the base attack damage on a fist hit is 15 here. That means that you can get that going actually pretty well. I think there's some cool numbers you can reach with this, but I think it's kind of like Draining Cutter. It's a bit hard to control. I mean, there's so many instances in the game where you just need to stop attacking. You need to get away from your enemies in order to stay safe. And a lot of times on smaller enemies, the damage is not going to be that important because they're going to be dead before you can build it up too much. I think you can get some really cool combo numbers against bosses, but again, it's kind of a risky play. It's a bit dangerous, but honestly, I think it's kind of cool to see. I would not take this very often. I think there are some better picks if you're just trying to win, but I think this is a cool experimental hammer at the least. Up next, we have Explosive Upper. Your dash upper deals plus 100% damage in a even larger area. So this is a really cool hammer. It's definitely going to work best with Aspect of Demeter here, because now you can actually get those 5 bonus hits with a giant explosion that deals even more damage using that Explosive Upper move. So I think it's really cool for that. It's not going to work that great with the other aspect there. I guess with Gilgamesh, it's actually not a horrible pick, just because you're going to be wanting to apply Maim, I guess, sometimes anyway. So that way you can get a little bit of an AoE range on that Explosive Upper, on that dash upper move. But I think this is just really mostly cool with Aspect of Demeter, possibly the top pick with Aspect of Demeter, honestly. It's just so much fun to use, I think. I'd probably put it pretty high up there for Demeter, not that high up there for the rest of the aspect, probably A for Demeter. Up next, we have Flying Cutter. Hold down your special for longer range and up to plus 100% base damage. This is actually kind of a disappointing hammer for me, and the reason why it disappoints me is because throughout the game you'll often see a lot of hammer upgrades that have the word charged in them. Charged volley, charged flight, etc. And this one sounds like the same thing, and it seems like it should be, but it's actually quite underwhelming. I think the big thing there is the range on it. It is actually kind of underwhelming how far this actually goes out. And then, like, trying to go full into a special build with the fist, to me, has proven to be a bit difficult. So I think Flying Cutter is a bit wonky. You can't use it with Aspect of Talos, so you can't do any funny business there. And you can't combine it with some of the cooler hammers for the fist here that I'll talk about in a minute here. So I think this is sort of a weird one that I like to leave behind. There's probably a bit more experimentation I could be doing with it, so if you guys have used it and found a good way to use it, let me know in the comments below. Next up, we have Rush Kick. Your special becomes an advancing kick that also deals 40 base damage twice. So this is a cool hammer. I think it looks really cool because when you use it, you start flying around the room, and it's actually really amazing to see. I think the damage actually ends up being a little underwhelming, and also the big downside here, I think, is that you can't actually dash upper and use this move at the same time. So it says your special becomes an advancing kick. So your dash special does not become an advancing kick. That is separate. That is a separate move. So the hammer does not affect that. So you'd have to just tap the special without dashing around too much, otherwise it's going to cancel the whole thing out. I think it's actually pretty cool. I don't know if I'd call it super powerful. I don't think it's going to necessarily increase your damage by all that much here, but it's really a lot of fun to use, that's for sure. And I would actually kind of say that it's still worth taking just as a bit of fun at the least. Next up, we have Quake Cutter. After using your special, deal 90 damage in an area where you land. This one sounds really cool, and I really want this one to work, but I've yet to find a good way to make it work. So, similar to Rush Kick, which we just saw, you cannot dash upper into this move. You have to use your regular special, and then there's a long animation after you do the little uppercut there, where Zagreus comes down and slams the ground, and there's this pretty large AoE around him that deals 90 damage and more to enemies around him. So it's cool. I just don't know, again, it kind of has a similar problem where you don't necessarily want to get into this realm with the fist where you're just spamming the special button over and over and over again. I do think it's really interesting. It definitely needs a little bit more experimentation. But I've yet to see anyone really utilize it to great effect personally. I think I'm looking at the combos here, and I'm thinking maybe we should try something out with this. Quake Cutter plus Flying Cutter? Maybe that's the match made in heaven that could turn things around here. I have utilized it to some effect where you get to kill a bunch of enemies around you pretty easily, but then when you get to bosses, you kind of don't want to be using this move because you have to remain stationary, you can't be dashing around too much, and so then it kind of falls off there, and I'd rather just switch to attacking a lot more. Next up, we have Kinetic Launcher. Your special becomes a charged ranged attack that deals 50 base damage. This one is just so much fun. And I know I've been saying that about all the hammers so far with the fist, but this one really is a lot of fun. So you kind of shoot out this this beam, kind of, what I call it the Hadouken move, basically, where you throw out this beam of energy at the enemies, and it has a nice range to it, and the damage isn't that bad, really. And this does work with Aspect of Demeter. I think this is actually a great pair with that, actually, because you're going to deal more damage, and now you have the option of doing it from a range. It actually works really well, I think, there. You do have to hold it down to get that increased range a bit on it, but I think it's worth it. It's a great pair with Demeter, actually, honestly. Probably A tier. It doesn't work with Talos or Gilgamesh, unfortunately, but it's never a wrong pick for Demeter, and it's probably actually an okay pick for Aspect of Zag, too, sometimes. Next up, we have Heavy Knuckle. Your attack becomes a slower 3-hit sequence, which deals 35 base damage. So we talked about how the fists have normally a 15 base damage attack, so this increases it by 20. It's very significant. However, this move does not affect your dash strikes, which means that your dash strikes remain the same and only your regular attacks get the increase. Oh, and by the way, you're not attacking as rapidly, so it kind of makes things a bit weird overall. Not my favorite hammer with the fist there. I do think it's okay. I think it's very usable. I think one of the nice things about the fist here is, like, there's not really too many hammers where it's just, this makes you worse. And this one I think is still fine, is what I'd say. If you pair this with some high percentage boons, it can still work pretty well here, but I think there's just too many other good hammers to pick instead. Alright, next up we have Colossus Knuckle. While using your attacker or special, you are sturdy. So sturdy is a buff that means you take 30% less damage. So 30% less damage while you're in the middle of using your attacker special, that's actually really nice. This is a great defensive pick. I think this is really nice for a second hammer choice, where maybe you're down a couple Death Defiances and you're in Elysium and you're a little worried about being able to kill Hades at that point. Well, this is a great pickup at that point, I think. If you take it for your first hammer, I feel like it's not very exciting because it doesn't increase your damage output or anything like that. But I think it's fine, actually. You know, I put it as an A tier because it almost feels like it's never wrong to take it. It also works with every aspect here, so you're probably going to see it offered a good amount. Alright, last we have Rending Claws. Your maim afflicted foes take plus 25% more damage and move 30% slower. This is the exclusive hammer for Aspect of Gilgamesh here, and so this is actually really cool, I think. So Gilgamesh, remember, when enemies are maimed, they take an additional 25% damage already. So when you have Rending Claws, that means they're going to take an additional 50% more, and then they're going to move 30% slower. I think this is probably the top pick for Gilgamesh just because it's really cool. There's a lot of nice things you can do with maim, I think, actually. I don't know if you might not have known this, but maim can actually increase the damage from your companion keepsakes, which means those big Meg or Thanatos hits from the companions can deal even more damage. So if you get Rending Claws, plus 50% to that is crazy. There is still that big downside to the whole maim mechanic in general, where you're going to take a lot more damage, but I think this is still kind of a cool pick to check out with Gilgamesh here. Alright guys, that does it for the hammers. So real quick now, I'm just going to go through each aspect again and cover what boons I think work best. Now with the fists here, there's definitely going to be a lot of overlap since most of the fist aspects play very, very similarly. So with Aspect of Zag, you really just want to focus especially on your attack, even more so than the other three aspects, since you get no bonus to using your special. Now, a lot of times what hammers you get are going to kind of determine where your build ends up going and which boons you're going to want to get. But for now, I'm going to say with Aspect of Zagreus, you should probably take the percentage boons. I'm talking about Athena, Aphrodite, Artemis, or Demeter on the attack. You really want to avoid Poseidon's attack here because knocking foes away from you while you're trying to attack them is never good. But one of the nice things with the fists is that you can actually even take Zeus on the attack, and it works actually pretty decently since you're going to be attacking fairly rapidly with them. So I think Zeus is actually a pretty nice pick, and even Dionysus works pretty well here too. Now when it comes to Talos, there's some cool stuff you can do here, but again, I think you mostly want to focus on attack damage. I think getting a boon on your special is nice, and it might actually be best to put something like Ares' Doom on the special there, since that way you're not trying to scale that damage, but instead get that flat Doom damage instead, and that works really well. So again, you're probably going to do the same thing in Aspect of Zag, get those percentage boons from Athena, Artemis, Aphrodite, and Demeter on your attack, maybe Ares' Doom on the special. One really cool thing I've seen people do with Aspect of Talos is put Poseidon on the special here, so you pull them towards you with the magnetic cutter, and then you push them away with the Poseidon knockback attack, and I don't know if I'd call it really good, but it's definitely really fun, so check that out if you can. Alright, next we have Aspect of Demeter. So with this one, I think it's really good to get a big chunky percentage special boon from Aphrodite, Artemis, Demeter, and even Poseidon works fine here, I'm gonna say. So I think all those work really well, but you still need to be landing attacks here. So you're probably gonna do the same thing with your attack boons, but remember Zeus can work. And a lot of times with any of these fist builds, Ares can work on the attacker special pretty much any time. I think he's a fine combination here, really. You can use any of this stuff and it works really well with almost any of these aspects. I'm thinking even Dionysus works pretty well with the Aspect of Demeter here. So you land a bunch of attack hits on them, you build up the hangover damage, and then you land a big chunky 5x special from, let's say, Artemis, and you get some crits in there, big damage, right? I mean, that's got to be really cool. I think that's one of the things I really like about Aspect of Demeter is that it's really versatile, and there's a lot of different boons that can work really well with it. Last up, we have Aspect of Gilgamesh. So here is where I think things become a little bit more narrow. where I think a big percentage boon on the attack works best with Gilgamesh and not a whole lot else. You really don't want to be using too many dash attacks with Gilgamesh. So Artemis on the attack works amazingly, but of course there's always Aphrodite, Athena, and Demeter. Those work great too. I don't know about focusing a whole lot on the special with Gilgamesh. I'm kind of iffy about it. If you get the chance to throw Ares on the special, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. I think that's a nice damage increase. But beyond that, I wouldn't think too hard about it, honestly. All right, guys, that does it for the fist for me for today. And next up is going to be the rail, and that's going to be the last of our weapon guides in this series. If you guys haven't had the chance, remember to check out the stream at twitch.tv/Halien. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. What's this noise? No, I don't like that piece either. I just KO'd Rare Crop? Yes! Yes, my lifelong dream. Amazing quality content we got going on back there. All right, guys, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more Hades content and other games from me. All right, guys, have a nice day. I'll see you.